Cool. So we are live with Zuben Mathews. Zuben, thank you so much for joining me. The man who turned down my term sheet but put me on the cap table anyway.
You were the first person to give us a term sheet, so I'll always be grateful for that, Charlie. And I also appreciate you spending the time with me today, especially since you're launching your app, I believe, at 4 p.m. today. So I'll give you a plug instead of you giving yourself a plug.
Thank you. Thank you. I did lowball you on purpose. When you're the first bidder, you don't want to bid against yourself. So
Yeah, but you lowballed us so badly. I was like, holy, two things happened. One was like, oh my God, do I know what I'm doing? And B, is this guy just effing with us? So wasn't quite sure, but it was appreciated because you always have a little bit more confidence once you get your first term sheet.
There you go. I often tell founders, and I don't remember whether I had said this to you or not specifically, is that my goal is for you to be dissatisfied with the bid, but not so dissatisfied that you don't want to work with me. So
Fair enough.
that's the sweet spot.
You hit that part of the sweet spot. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that what they say partially in a negotiation? A good negotiation is when both parties walk away feeling a little bit screwed. Maybe
Yeah.
not screwed, a little bit unhappy. Let's call it that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's the way. So I wonder if you can just sort of kick things off and share Brigit, Zuben, and your background and how that led into what you wound up building, just for context.
Sure. I mean, my background is semi-typical, initially finance. I started working as a technology investment banking analyst, in this case at Deutsche Bank in San Francisco, as my first real full-time job. And what that did was it helped me understand, at least at a financial level, but also got to meet a whole bunch of CEOs and CFOs as a young kid, about how technology companies kind of operate, but more importantly, what they did and what hopefully good or great looks like. I mean, one of the companies that I was kind of involved with, even again, just to put things in perspective, as a first year banking analyst was Salesforce. And that was kind of cool because at that point in time, it was quite a revolution where software as a service, now it's almost becoming antiquated with AI and what's going on. But at that point in time, it literally was a pivotal step in software. So being able to be semi-involved with companies like that, and more importantly, learn from the CFO, understand what the software actually did and why it was a revolution at that point in time, were part of the building blocks. Post that, I came up with an idea that I pitched to a couple of board members at Deutsche Bank as a 24-year-old, ended up running a small investment banking team. That's unique, but that was kind of my first foray. I don't want to call it into entrepreneurship, but into building something from scratch, coming up with an idea, pitching it, getting funding, and in this case, actually running it. Granted that I had the support structure of a very large bank, so it changes things completely relative to doing the same thing on your own. But that was a pretty big step for me as part of my career. So I did that for about a decade, a little over a decade. And then probably had the worst job.
Before we move forward, I actually just want to ask a question
Yeah.
about, because investment banking is an area that there's a track, there's a program, there's an expectation of what first years do and second years and all that sort of stuff. And just even the confidence to say, there's something else I want to do, to go to a board member, which is not a sort of, it's not like, you go get your MBA at one of two schools that produces, a disproportionate number of startups, right? And it's sort of like, oh, I'm going to go get my Harvard MBA and go start a company. That's a regular thing. That's not a regular thing to do. And I'm curious about what gave you the confidence to be able to be entrepreneurial within an environment that I wouldn't expect, I didn't go through it, has entrepreneurial vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot more common. You don't need to go to board members, but do something a little bit more entrepreneurial on the sales and trading side. If you're coming up there, and honestly, you need it. Even for there, you need a little bit more experience. I had a good boss, quite frankly, who was quite positive, who's still a good friend of mine, was an investor and partner of mine at Brigit as well, who helped through that transition, or at least through that pitch. But honestly, it was a strong pitch based on a significant amount of data. And the initial thesis was, let's go find a director or MD. At that point, I must have been an associate or still, probably a first year associate, pitching an idea. And then I was like, I'm just going to go do it. And they're like, sure, go ahead and figure it out. But yeah, I think having the support of, in this case, my boss, but some level of exuberance from youth with a pretty strong pitch.
Gotcha. And then from there, so you work on that for 10 years. What's next?
I finally took some time off, and Deutsche was great to me, if I could say that. They said, take a year off, but we'll give you only a year, but come back anytime you want. And I was like, I was done. And I started traveling the world. For those who haven't done it, with at that point in time with no responsibilities, buying one-way tickets is probably the best thing you can do for your mind, your soul, your heart, anything and everything combined. But somehow one of my clients, my former clients who used to be at SAP, kept calling pretty much and asked me to run M&A at Infosys, which I'll be honest was the single worst job of my life. I won't get into why. But I ended up saying no initially and ended up taking that job. And what I should have done at that point in time was like, look, I knew I was wanted to start a company. I already had some essence of starting something. Again, I understand it's nothing close to starting a company. And in all due respect, I can say that having started a company. But it was still something brand new, which had not been done before, and I was contributing that. But what I should have gone and done is taken my sweet time and gone and built a company then. But I did a year of Infosys. That definitely did not work out, and I'll skip the details. But I used the time after that to go do what I believe my calling was. And quite frankly, for anyone who's listening, who's debating and being a founder, one of the things I'll say is that if I had done this and failed, I would have been happier than not trying at all.
There you go. There you go. It's interesting you make the comment on doing the world travel, and to some extent, I think it's the same decision as like when you don't have as many dependents, responsibilities, overhead, and all of this sort of stuff. That is the point in which it is most optimal to take risk early on, and also fail fast, right? Because if it doesn't work, you can more easily get back on that track than later on when you're disrupting a career in flow.
True. But I'm going to be partially contrarian on that and be less practical because founders should not be practical at all. They wouldn't be starting a company. It's fundamentally nonsensical with the challenges one has to face. But honestly, even if you have some responsibilities and you can manage through it at some point in time, I think part of it comes with confidence. A lot of people I know, especially in finance, as we just talking about, or honestly, any career, who've been doing it so long, not totally sure if they're good for anything. There was a 30 Rock skit a long time ago, and there was a bunch of interns who used to be former investment banking analysts, and Alec Baldwin, whatever the name of the character was, pointed out, saying, "Hey, those guys are good for nothing. They don't know what the hell they're doing, but damn, do they work hard." But so having that level of confidence, saying, "Hey, if it doesn't work out, I'll find a job," is something that I think that is a lot of people don't have that, and I hope people want to start businesses. Not that this has become a push for people to start businesses, but should consider. I see too many people that I know who have the ability to do so, but get stuck in the rotating, hey, this is my job every day. Will I get a job if I go start something? Not taking that leap.
So I'm curious, I've been asking this question lately because I've been sort of on this search to, especially with the book, Founder Unfriendly, kind of comes from the idea that the friendliest you can be to a founder sometimes is telling them, I don't think that'll work, or that thing is not the thing. But it is hard, especially if you've gone over your skis and put your own money into it and family money and all of this sort of stuff. One thing that I have been asking people to try and make it not so much about them and their work is, what data has earned your time and attention on this idea, to get a sense of, that I respect you enough that you should have a high bar for your time, and it is valuable. And this project, this startup should earn your time. So I'm curious, when you first came up with the problem set and the beginnings of the idea for Brigit, what did you see out there that made you think, now that I have learned this has earned my time?
Yeah, Charlie, I don't know if you remember, I had a 100-page appendix, which is not common, and no one should actually do that. It was my first time, thinking through this. But to your point, I had to convince myself it was worth my time and my money, because I invested in the company, both of those things, before I had the right to ask you or anybody else for money. I think for me, it was literally writing up an investment memo, a very detailed investment memo, which included market competition. The fact that this was, for me, the idea was to use cash flow data to solve what happened to be an overdraft problem, and people didn't realize that banks were making a killing because that kind of information wasn't really available. And I did a lot more research in terms of trying to understand who was paying and how much were banks making. Can I replicate this piece of technology? Can I make it simple enough for that same core user. So I literally went through a pretty detailed set of analysis, mostly theoretical, but I also talked to over 50 odd people and 50 odd potential customers, but also true industry experts, including the CFPB, et cetera, to truly get a deeper understanding. And then I had this thesis, which was again cash flow data, which is live transactional, honest data, actually helps solve that problem, but it has to be able to be solved in a product that was as convenient. And once I got those check boxes, at least in my head, don't get me wrong, there's so many things wrong, so many. And hopefully the next company I start will have less things wrong, but still a lot of things wrong. Hopefully learnings from the past. But that was kind of it. And I don't think this is how I would approach it to that level of detail today, because there is a lot of value in just throwing things out there once you have a deep enough conviction, right? So instead of using an example for me, looking back, instead of having a 100-page appendix, I would still be nerdy. I would have a 75-page appendix, maybe a 60-page appendix, but go faster and actually launch some stuff. And I think what's happened today, the ability to iterate much, much faster, also potentially, I'm not advocating this, go wider sooner, because being able to write code has become so much easier, as you were talking about earlier in our 2-minute pre-call about just even how you're vibe coding things yourself. The ability to get to market has become even cheaper and a lot faster. So put things in market.
It's fascinating that I invested out of Brooklyn Bridge Ventures between 2012 and 2023 or 4. And about 50% of the companies at the time that I agreed to make the investment had not launched a product yet. And there's no way that would be the case today, because the bar for getting something out there is so much lower. Even as a demo, to get consumer data back and, to test, go to market and all of that sort of stuff is such a dramatic change. And I think one of the biggest tests, and actually I was just talking to a founder about this yesterday, is you can get a belief that a product should exist. But I'm curious how much time you spent on, can I get this to the people who need it? Can I, this thing should exist. Here they are over there. And because I think that's one of the places that people stumble the most.
Yeah, I mean, what we did do was a few things. Obviously, understood the market, see what the competitors were, looking at other fintechs and what the CACs were. All of that was pre-launch of the product, but we ran tests. We ran Facebook ads. I don't remember what the budgets were. Obviously, the positioning was all wrong. It was more focused on certain aspects, overpaying for overdrafts, etc. All that stuff we had to learn. And the signal, honestly, the reality is, and I was thinking about this the other day, you can make, when you don't have enough data to actually decide whether it's positive signals or not. That's the reality of it, unless you decide what the baseline is. But we thought we got enough positive signal with the ads that we're running, with the wait list that we were building, that it was definitely interesting. But honestly, that's also, as I think more about it, it's easy to fool yourself into that unless you have a good baseline.
Let's talk about initial team. Decision to get co-founders, whether you do it on your own. What was sort of the initial thinking, and how did you scope out who you needed, and how did you convince them that this was worth working on?
Well, that's a good one. It's also very painful. I categorically, so we just, for anyone listening, Brigit is a financial health app that helps people get money between paychecks, budget, and also build their credit score and save. But the core thesis of everything that we built on is hopefully be one of the best companies in the world to understand cash flow data for individuals, understand the income, volatile income, historical spending patterns, and have built that, use that and only that piece of data to help underwrite if we help understand if we can give them some money and manage risk. So it was relatively new, especially when we launched in 2018. I specifically needed a CTO. And for me, it was very important for someone to challenge me and also be able to be a subject matter expert something I could not do. And for me, there were very few companies at that point in time who had even dealt in cash flow information. And it happened to turn out, and obviously this is not necessarily the most favorite company of the world today, Palantir, 2 years prior or a year and a half prior, had sent some of their forward deployed engineers to Brazil to learn a little bit more about cash flow data. That's how niche this particular space was back in the day. So I called up my friends who were in Palantir. I said, hey, who do you know has worked on this problem? And this guy's name kept coming up, Hamill. And initially, one of my friends reached out to him, and he's like, "Well, I'm not really interested." And hopefully, 3-4 months later, he finally took my call. And again, one of my favorite people in the world, brilliant in so many ways, and the yin to my yang. But the way I had to convince him was a few things, as he would tell you. One was I was really focused, and he really, really cared and understood the problem, but actually trying to help people. And there was a problem that I felt when I was in college. I literally ate enough Snickers bars because I didn't have money between paychecks, and I wanted to I wanted to film myself on a Saturday night, etc. And he grew up from a family where he had seen this problem, where people in his family ended up either overdrafting or didn't have money between paychecks, just waiting for their paychecks, or even worse, borrowing from payday lenders or friends and family. Friends and family, hopefully, is a better way of doing that. So he resonated with that problem, as did I, in many different ways. And he was like, all right, here's a business that hopefully made sense. There's enough pricing between the evil banks, I call them evil, not you, and how much they were charging. By the way, just a plug, a negative plug, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo still makes about $2 billion in NIBIT, approximately, less so now, but in NIBIT from overdraft fees. And just to be clear, that is mostly for people who need money between paychecks. It's not the people who are making $250,000, just to be clear. And sadly, despite us being the wealthiest country in the world, sorry, Charlie, this is still in me. It kills me that over 50% of us live paycheck to paycheck. It's just 70%. It's just killing. Sorry, moving on. He was the guy, finally came on board, and because of the 100-page business plan or appendix I already had, he realized it was an actual business. It's a combination of an interesting problem to solve that he had experience in, and being able to help people with a real business.
I'm quite curious about the alignment, and you obviously talk so passionately about this, and you experienced it, your co-founder experienced it. There are a lot of people out there, and you may have run into them in certain circles, who want to build an impact-focused startup. And I have never seen you describe Brigit as being in this like category versus a fintech company that happens to make a positive impact on people. And for anybody who wants to build something that makes the world a better place, that improves the lives of customers, do you think have you seen personally people make unnecessary trade-offs, or too much of a trade-off between seeking out a really viable business model, something that can actually make money, scale, and all this sort of stuff, because they think that those two things can't happen at once?
I mean, I can only talk about us realistically, right? I mean, we had some great investors who were impact investors, including the Omidyar network of Flourish. Core was also helpful. And they understood that in the world that we live in today, you need to, unless somebody's funding you for a philanthropical organization, you really need to be able to build a business model that is hopefully significantly better than everything else out there. In the world that we're living in today, compute is so much still cheaper, being able to get to markets much cheaper than paying core banking platforms, et cetera, than a bank. And we don't need 5,000% margins from a NIBIT for an overdraft. It is this world for us to compete. So there's enough spread to actually, I believe, to build a real worthwhile business in our case, which is still profitable and still growing 30, 40 odd percent, despite us being a relatively larger company than we were last year, the year before that, et cetera, and hundreds of millions in revenue. But but let me put it this way. Like, you said we didn't pitch ourselves as an impact company. Because we made decisions that were so impactful that people came to us anyway. Most of our team really, really cares. So I will tell you, despite profitability and despite revenue growth, especially historically as a private company, as you know, we sold last year, we continually at the board level, multiple times, many, many times, even on a daily basis, quite frankly, today, we make decisions on the betterment of the user relative to profitability. We could be a lot more profitable company. I'll say that even though, like I said, part of a public company, but we want to make the right decisions for what are long-term success for the user. Because if you service the user well, you'll be profitable enough to be happy. And that's what matters, as long as you run the business more effectively, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if I answered your question per se, but I think to answer your in a TLDRs, there's absolutely, depending on how we're running our organization, and there's definitely an opportunity for both. That is why you have impact investors still investing in profitable companies or wanting companies to be profitable and and scale.
So, in what ways, starting out, were you unprepared to take on this challenge and you found that out as you got going?
Every single aspect of the job. And if anyone, as a real first time founder, says otherwise, send them to me and I'll have an interesting, challenging conversation over coffee or drinks, maybe. But no, I mean, like, look, managing people, I came from a finance background and you cannot manage. And now you're running a team. And obviously, as the team grows, so just you have engineering, you have different personalities, different backgrounds, right? You have engineering who have a completely different work. I want to say work ethic, but how about this? Work hours fundamentally than what you're used to, and work locations from where you used to pre or post COVID. It doesn't matter. So you have that kind of mentality. And at the end of the day, you're looking for outcomes, but you're surprised how they're getting the outcomes because you're not historically used to that. You have people who are in customer service who have a different expectation of the company. You've got product managers, you've got people who are operators as well. So being able to go from a wider aspect, from a very narrow aspect where you're in finance, everybody, whether you like it or not, somehow have already gotten the memo. They know the certain hours they're expected to work. They know what's expected off of you and how we end up getting things done. Rightfully or wrongly, mostly, I'll be honest, wrongly, it is very narrow minded. It's just the way it's been. Fortunately, you have a diverse set of people, but all with same goals, being taught to do something in a certain manner, and now you have to go manage a wider background. I would say that was one of the most challenging things as as a CEO, co-founder of a company,
Yeah, I
among
heard
many other things, including
I
making sure you exist the next day. Sorry.
I heard similar things from Bill Magnuson, the co-founder of Braze, who came up through the engineering side, and he was very surprised to learn that salespeople do not operate like code, and that you can't just tell them, "Oh, here's the new message," and apply it like a server patch, and just imagine that all of these people will, interpret it
Follow.
in exactly the right way, and it'll sort of proliferate it, and all of that sort of stuff. How would you prepare someone for taking on venture investors and that relationship? If somebody sort of you feel hasn't totally thought this through but has offers, is there any kind of mental prep for that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the one thing I had a little bit more experience on, just being a part of the finance world, but not having actually raised venture capital. So, Paquito experience. Just find people who you think will get along with. And the questions that I would generally ask is what I asked. It's easy. I mean, hopefully you should be giving people advice. That's not me, but it's easy when things are good. And one of the things that I kept asking, whether it's Series A or investors, seed investors, is will this team, will this person, will this organization be with you when times are tough? Easy is easy. Good is good. Good is wonderful. Great is even better. They'll do anything you want. But what happens when times get tough? So if there's any diligence someone can do, or just trust their gut to a large extent when things get difficult, because they will in some form, whether it's COVID, whether it's the lords of Google, Facebook, or whoever else. There will be times that things are tough. Don't know what those times will be. Does your investor have your back, and to what extent have you seen that before? That is the thing I have optimized for in the past, and I will continue to do in the future.
One last question before I let you go. Hiring, and maybe this is two-part. One is, in your best hires, is there a thing that you found yourself optimizing for that really paid off?
Oh.
And then secondly, is there anything, especially on the senior side, that you feel like you hired too early or too late?
Oof. To answer your first question, find people who actually want the job and are driven, fundamentally driven, right? I mean, as I think about some of the other founders that I know, one of them who I actually have a lot of respect for, infrastructure, fintech company, I'll let you guess which one, really likes hiring other founders. And I think that because it's a larger company, he knows what works for him. And there's this drive from a founder and the ability of saying, hey, something's going to catch on fire, go put the fire out and do the worst part of the job. As a founder, you have to find the pain and go try to solve it if nobody else can. Because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility, especially as a founder CEO. To answer your second part of the question is, did we hire too late? Yeah, more senior people. It's the other thing too many senior people are hired too late, including HR. And given the fact that, as I pointed out, like at least, and we're on even today, almost 300 in ARR, and we only have 130, 140 people, give or take. but I would hire an HR person sooner, an HR lead sooner for sure. And that's definitely one, and more subject matter experts sooner.
And is that on the HR side? Is that to do better on the recruiting side? Is that to take care of your people and culture better? Both?
All of it. You want to hire the best people you possibly can. I mean, that is a fundamental learning. We got lucky with that, but again, like I said, I'll go even faster and try to hire the right people, ideally specialists, depending on what I'm trying to build or what individual's trying to build. But like, I would definitely hire a head of a people person who can hold the culture, because culture is going to be so important. It is, and as I was starting the company, including going to your Bear Mountain retreat, a lot of people, it was very early on, kept talking about culture, and I knew that was important. My co-founder fundamentally believed in it, but it was all coming together naturally. At some point, you need someone to really spearhead that, and also help you organize recruiting better, because we were all doing all of this ourselves. And I think as you scale, being able to have the right person in the right seat who can ideally challenge you, the more you get of those, the better, in my opinion.
Cool. Well, it's been a fun ride to be a part of. It's awesome to see you continue to be successful post-acquisition. Appreciate you giving me the shot despite my initial low bid. And
it was all your charm, Charlie. It was always your charm.
It's my charming personality. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for spending the time.
And anyone listening, please log on to the app and buy the book.
Thank you.
That's me speaking, not Charlie endorsing himself.
All right. Have a great day.
Cheers, bud. Talk to you soon.